Have you ever wondered if God keeps his promises? In a world full of broken commitments, the book of Genesis tells a story of a faithful God making unbreakable covenant promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But how do these ancient promises prove God's faithfulness today? Join us on Apologetically Unapologetic as we uncover the evidence and connect Genesis to your life. Let's dive in. Welcome to Apologetically Unapologetic, where we tackle big questions about faith with boldness and clarity. I'm Josh, and today we're exploring the covenant promises in Genesis. God's commitments to the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Our big question: how do these promises provide evidence of God's faithfulness? We'll dig into biblical text, historical context, and insight from top Christian apologists and theologians to show why these ancient promises still matter. If you're ready to see God's faithfulness in action, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get started. Let's set the stage. Genesis chapters 12 through 50 focuses on the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and God's covenant promises to them. The cornerstone is the Abrahamic Covenant in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, where God tells Abraham, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. All peoples on the earth will be blessed through you." This covenant, reiterated to Isaac and Jacob, has three key promises: land, descendants, and blessing to all nations. But what makes these promises evidence of God's faithfulness? First, they're specific and testable. God promises Abraham a land, Canaan, countless descendants, and a global blessing through his lineage. These aren't vague predictions. They're concrete commitments tied to history. Dr. John Lennox, Oxford mathematician and apologist, says, "The specificity of God's promises in Genesis sets them apart from other ancient documents. They're not just spiritual ideals, but historical claims we can evaluate." Let's look at the historical context. Abraham lived around 2000 BC in a world of polytheistic cultures. Unlike the capricious gods of Mesopotamia, the God of Genesis makes unilateral promises. He binds himself without requiring human perfection. Dr. Walter Kaiser, a biblical scholar, notes, "The Abrahamic Covenant is unconditional in its core. God's faithfulness depends on his character, not human merit." This is huge. God's promises hold even when Abraham doubts or falters, like when he lied about Sarah in Genesis 12, 10 through 20. The covenant scope is staggering. God promises Abraham descendants as numerous as the stars in Genesis 15:5, despite Abraham and Sarah's old age and childlessness. Yet, history shows the growth of Israel into a nation, fulfilling this promise. The blessing to all nations points to the Messiah, fulfilled in Jesus, as Galatians 3:16 confirms. Now, the promises were made to Abraham and his offspring. It does not say "and to offsprings," referring to many, but referring to one, "and to your offspring," who is Christ. Tim Keller, pastor and theologian, writes, "The covenant with Abraham is the thread that runs through the entire Bible, culminating in Christ." How do we know God keeps these promises? Let's examine the evidence. First, the promised land. God specifies Canaan as Abraham's inheritance in Genesis 15:18 through 21. Historical records confirm that Israel occupied Canaan under Joshua around 1400 BC, as detailed in the book of Joshua. Archaeological evidence like the Merneptah Stele in 1208 BC mentions Israel as an established people in Canaan, aligning with the biblical timeline. Dr. Kenneth Kitchen, an Egyptologist, argues the presence of Israel in Canaan by the 13th century BC supports the historical reliability of Genesis's land promise. Second, the promise of descendants. Abraham's family grows from one child, Isaac, to the 12 tribes of Israel through Jacob. By the time of the Exodus, Numbers 146 records over 600,000 Israelite men, not counting women and children, a nation born from one man. Dr. William Lane Craig, philosopher and apologist, states, the rapid growth of Israel from a single family to a nation is a remarkable fulfillment, defying natural odds. Third, the blessing to all nations. Genesis 12:3's promise that all people would be blessed through Abraham finds its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ, a descendant of Abraham. The Gospel of Matthew opens with, the book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. The spread of Christianity worldwide, impacting billions, traces back to this promise. Dr. R.C. Sproul notes, the global reach of the gospel is the ultimate evidence of God's faithfulness to his covenant with Abraham. Critics might argue that these fulfillments are coincidental or exaggerated, but the specificity of the promises, naming Canaan, predicting a nation from a barren couple, and foretelling a global blessing, makes coincidence unlikely. The Amarna letters also mention Canaanite cities like Jerusalem, matching Genesis's geography. What's striking about the Genesis covenants is how God remains faithful despite human failure. Abraham doubts God's promise, taking Hagar to produce Ishmael in Genesis chapter 16. Isaac repeats his father's lie about his wife in Genesis 26:7. Jacob deceives to steal Esau's blessing in Genesis chapter 27. Yet God reaffirms his covenant each time. This pattern reveals God's character. Dr. John Walton, a biblical scholar, explains, the Genesis patriarchs are not moral exemplars, but flawed humans through whom God works his redemptive plan. God's faithfulness shines through their flaws, proving his commitment isn't based on human worthiness. This resonates today. We all fail, yet God's promises hold. Romans 15:8 says, Christ came to confirm the promise to the patriarchs. For I tell you that Christ became a servant to the circumcised to show God's truthfulness, in order to confirm the promises given to the patriarchs. Dr. N.T. Wright, a New Testament scholar, writes, the covenant with Abraham is fulfilled in Jesus, showing God's faithfulness across centuries. The continuity from Genesis to the New Testament underscores a God who keeps his word. Why does this matter for us? The covenant promises in Genesis aren't just ancient history. They reveal a God who is trustworthy today. If God fulfilled his promises to Abraham, land, descendants, and global blessing, despite impossible odds, he can be trusted with our lives. C.S. Lewis puts it this way: the fact that God keeps his promises in history gives us confidence he will keep them in our personal lives. For skeptics, the historical fulfillment of these promises challenges the idea that the Bible is mere mythology. For believers, it strengthens faith in God's reliability. The patriarch stories mirror our own. God works through our weaknesses. Whether you're facing doubt, failure, or uncertainty, Genesis reminds us that God's promises endure. The covenant promises in Genesis, land, descendants, and blessing, stand as powerful evidence of God's faithfulness. From Abraham's call to the global spread of the gospel, we see a God who keeps his word, no matter the obstacle. At Apologetically Unapologetic, we're committed to equipping you to defend your faith with confidence. So join us for more content like this. Want early access to our videos, exclusive resources, and weekly Bible studies? Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/apologetically unapologetic. Your support keeps this channel bold and biblical. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness. And let's keep the conversation going in the comments. May God keep you and bless you. Really quick, before you go, let me explain why I felt led to start this channel. When talking to Pilate, Jesus said, "I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate responds by asking, "What is the truth?" It's evident that a lot of people are still asking this question almost 2,000 years later. And while we live in an amazing time with the wealth of the world's knowledge available in the palm of our hands, there's often too much information, leaving people unable to process what's true and what's not true. Paul describes such times in this way when he writes his second letter to his disciple Timothy. Always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. There are several who expound on what truth is, but often they are misguided, or they are malice in their intent, or they're being intellectually dishonest. My hope is that I am able to provide evidence for why the scriptural narrative is true, a contextual and practical explanation of the principles found in its writings, and a defense for other believers. As Peter explains, you should always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. If you find value in this channel as I do, there are a few ways you can help, both by gifting and without spending any money. First, react and interact with these videos wherever you're watching from. This greatly helps the channel be seen by others and new people. Next, please share this content with others you feel may benefit from the information found here. Also, please subscribe to this channel on all social media. And finally, if you feel led to, and if you have the means to, please consider giving to this channel through the outlets previously mentioned, or the channel's Patreon. All these links are going to be in the video description. Thank you for watching, and may God keep you and bless you.